Encounter Talks with Don at Gessner Ministries, a forum for discussing challenging topics, dissecting truth, discovering hope and light in a world that desperately needs revival.
Sometimes it feels, Wes, like these Encounter Talks on a Friday get here a lot sooner than I'm expecting.
That is true.
Yeah. And I know that this week you took a little detour. We've been in the Psalms.
Right.
And you took a topic of prayer. Basically, I think a lot of the influence of that was because of our world circumstances there was the hurricane, no, not the hurricane, but there have been some hurricanes, but the earthquake in Haiti. And then, of course, the situation in Afghanistan has been horrific. So I know that you are speaking on your message about the emphasis of prayer. And so, each of these broadcasts, I try to think more in practical terms. What might be some of the thoughts that those that are watching, if they were to chime in, what would be some of their thoughts or questions, comments? And that's sort of the approach that I take. And so for me today, I call this the role of prayer in our current world situations. And that could mean here at home as well as in other places. But what part does prayer play in this kind of a situation? So go ahead and set me up there a bit, if you would.
Well, so I kind of went down the trail of speaking to North Americans, United States citizens, whoever lives in land of affluence, which includes both of us. I think it's really hard to engage in intercessory, heartfelt, heart-burdened prayer for things that are going on outside of your current situation, unless you're very intentional about becoming aware, digging deeper, finding a way to connect to the stories outside of our country. And I guess that's where I was going, hoping that some few at least would not just I think the response, I think it could be a rolling of the eyes. It could be, oh, here we go again. Oh, this just makes us feel guilty. I know that in other places where people have faced not just persecution, but lack of food, lack of a lot of things, or oppression, they don't have trouble gathering a prayer meeting. And they don't have trouble with people actually carrying a burden and interceding and crying out to God. And so my thought was, how great would it be if, myself included, we would try to become intentional about carrying some of these burdens on behalf of our brothers and sisters around the world, and even those who are Muslim, who are going to face, at least in Afghanistan, or people in Haiti, whatever, regardless of what they are, who have had great devastation, or the next storm, or the next. I guess it's when I read through the Bible, there was a lot of grief, and there were a lot of people that took on the grief of others. And I'm talking to myself. I mean, there have been times in my life when I've certainly been more aggressive about prayer, probably even back when I was in college, to be honest with you. So it's a call. It's a call to myself. It's a call to anybody who wants to listen. There are lots of needs to go around, and the level of burden that you're willing to bear, I think, is significant.
Yeah. And I was just thinking, while you were saying that, there has to be something to the idea that unless we personally experience something, can we actually get to the level of engagement, even in prayer or intercessory prayer, that might be for someone else? For instance, the best illustration for me right now is your own son and daughter-in-law spent time in Afghanistan. And I somehow have to believe that for them, this is much more personal than it would be for you or me, and maybe not as much for me as even for you. It's more personal, even being that closely connected. But I'm wondering about that piece
So
of it.
they were there. They were there for over 2 years, or almost 2 years. They know a lot of people that are native to Afghanistan. They worked with many of them. They were in harm's way with many of them, even though they were working in a school situation. I remember shortly after they came back, or within a year or two, I believe it was a Turkish or maybe a Jordanian who owned a restaurant where a lot of the Western people in Kabul ate, um, being killed by terrorists who came in and just shot up his restaurant. And they had eaten there many times. So there's definitely an investment in the people. And I guess what I learned just from listening to them, it's really easy as Americans, and I maybe should just talk for myself. We think about terrorism, and then you want to say that anybody that's a Muslim is a terrorist, which is not true. You want to say that, well, if they're in that country, they're probably all bad people, and really nothing could be further from the truth. Most Afghanistan people from Afghanistan, it's my understanding, just want to live life and want the same things that we want, and they don't want to harm other people, and they want to be free to raise their kids in a safe place, and women want to not be scared of the treatment that they get by men, especially under the Taliban. And so it goes on and on. I think there's truth to that. I just hope in my own heart that I'm able to, not just Afghanistan, but just take on the burdens
Yeah.
of other people, and not
Yeah.
so. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I try to live a pretty even keeled life. I don't get real upset about a lot of things, but the things that annoy me are really dumb, and they're really first world problems. And then I step back and go, oh, wow, there are people today fearing for their life.
Yeah.
And I'm here worried because the lady in the bank was annoying in the drive-through. That was yesterday, by the way. And obnoxious in my view, and I'm just like, wow.
Yeah. Well, let me just stay there on the prayer topic for a second in this regard. I mean, it's not difficult for me to begin making part of my prayers to include the people in Haiti, Afghanistan, other parts of the world, people suffering. It's not difficult to make that part of my prayers, but I kind of believe that you're talking about something different than that. And I heard you use the word intercessory prayer, because don't you think that there's a difference between, the general population making a part of it to be their prayer, and someone who really, it just becomes so much a part of them, where I don't know how to say this, but you almost go away in a burdened state and just have to intercede. I don't know. I guess that's why I'm struggling with that.
I think we don't have a problem doing that if a loved one all of a sudden is in the hospital about ready to die, unexpectedly, or we get really good at intercession in those moments.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's focused praying. And I think, probably, again, I go back to my college days and a couple of different churches where I've been, when we would set up a time for prayer. And my goal with that was always to just have a time and a place where you could come and intercede and unload a burden other than your devotions. Is something totally different. And I think as our world continues to spin, I know it's happened around the world. I remember in Korea back in the day when the largest church in the world was in Korea, they would talk about Prayer Mountain, and they would talk about 100,000 people praying at one time, coming to prayer meetings in the morning before work and late at night. And it was just, prayer was a major component. And I think, but I remember asking the president of Ohio Christian University back when I worked there, it was Circleville Bible College at the time. And I said to him, what will it take for people in America to sort of wake up spiritually? And he said, it will take a serious depression, a world war, or a famine. And then all of a sudden people get real serious about their situation. Yeah. So again, it's sort of we're sort of in, I thought today, the world right now feels like it has a wobbly tire.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. And I don't know if that can be fixed. It's just wobbly right now. You just never know. It's not extremely scary. It's just off a little bit. And that's enough for me. I want that to be enough to drive me to my knees on behalf of other people, on behalf of our own future. Rather than just living in fear.
It just feels to me that your call to prayer that you shared on Wednesday is more than just asking people to start praying about world situations as part of your routine, because I think we do that in general, don't we?
Right.
But there's something more that you were asking there, I think.
Yeah, I think it's to carry a burden, and to carry a burden outside of, Lord, thank you for our food, and
yeah,
it's something. It's fine. It doesn't have to be every day, but I think there is something to carrying a burden for people. I told you last night that I watched a political conservative commentator who does a lot of video podcasting, and it's never religious, faith-based. He's political. He's very conservative. He was a supporter of the last president, etc. And I came across him last night on Facebook, and I was mesmerized because for the whole entire time of his broadcast, he prayed. And tears were streaming down his face, and he was interceding on behalf of the people that were being persecuted and the hopelessness. I mean, if you can watch the image, this today was the image in Afghanistan of a baby being handed to the United States soldiers over a wall, and nobody else went over that wall. So you assume, a good chance that baby was being ushered to freedom, being given up by their parents in hopes that they could escape a land that's filled with evil.
Yeah.
That's sobering. That's how do I go sit in a restaurant tonight?
Yeah.
Or go to a football game? I mean, it brings me to tears now. I'm just thinking, it bothers me, Don, that I'm not I want that to bother me.
Yeah.
I want that to bother me, and pray for those people.
Yeah, I think that's you're putting in words more of what I'm feeling, because I think it takes real intentionality, and for us to get that focus, it just doesn't happen out of nowhere where it just hits us.
Right.
I don't think so. And I don't mean for this to be harsh, because I feel this for myself as well, but sometimes I have this thought, so I'm just going to share. It's a thought that we talk about praying a lot of times, and yet it seems like if we really believe that prayer makes a difference, the intentionality and the intensity of our praying would be a lot different too.
Correct.
I mean,
I agree with you.
I just have those thoughts, not that I'm expressing them, but it just goes through my head, and I'm meaning that for me as much as anyone.
Yeah. We typically don't have any problem getting very emotional and very intense if our need is great.
Yeah.
And I think the Bible calls us to bear one another's burdens, and it's so, this world is so strange because there are so many, if you live in America, even if you're in almost the most lowest of low poverty levels, you are so far ahead of some of the third world areas. And I go back to the Bible. It says it's easier, the whole thing about the rich man getting to heaven, easier for a camel to go through the eye of the needle and we're rich.
Yeah.
By world standards, we are fabulously wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. I want my heart, my life, my spiritual life to be shook up a bit.
Yeah. Well, I do appreciate that you've brought that kind of attention to our situation, and how important prayer, the role that prayer can play in all of that. And I just think that somehow there's got to be a bit of personalizing that for us to be able to reach a level of intensity in our efforts of prayer.
Well, Don, I'll give you a couple practical examples, and I'm going to pick on you, but not you personally. Well, I don't want to do that in a bad way. I could do it to my church. I could do it to any church that I know of or the ones I've led and pastored.
Yeah.
So your church has a food pantry.
Mm-hmm.
You do some things that are pretty nice for the people that come to the food pantry. I know some of those.
Yeah.
You live in a major city that has drug addicted people and other kinds of addictions and murder rate. If a person, why wouldn't the church engage with a burdened heart? Let's forget about around the world.
Yeah.
If you had 2 or 3 people in your church, and maybe you do, but what would happen if there was a prayer meeting for the broken and the addicted and the poor in the city of Indianapolis? Maybe it's joined by hundreds of people from all different churches.
Yeah.
That doesn't take anything. You're not going out on the street. You're not putting yourself in harm's way, but you are standing before God and saying, God, please hear our prayer.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thinking I'm just in my mind thinking that's the low hanging fruit, and we're not really doing it basically.
No, I get that. That's powerful. And the truth is it possible that sometimes even we are comforted by the fact that, we handed out a few pieces of food.
Right.
And
we've done our job.
What's that?
We've done our job.
Yeah, that sense of we've done our job now. So, wow. Yeah. There's a lot of thought-provoking things right there to consider. And I appreciate you sharing and with that emphasis in mind. So
well, thank you.
I think I'll let you go for this week, and probably before we even are ready for it, we'll be back to next week again.
Well, since we both share central Pennsylvania roots, I want to give you props for representing the village. Sealing Grove, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, did you see
Thanks
that?
for watching. Take a moment to share with your friends.